Well, welcome everyone to Remote Rundown. Today is April 16th, and I'm joined here with a few of our Offit Kurman labor and employment attorneys, Russell Berger, Veronica Yu, and Sarah Sawyer. It's been a busy week so far, and a lot of changes in what's going on related to the COVID pandemic. Tell us, what are the business owners thinking about, and what should they be thinking about? What should they be thinking about implementing for the next week to 10 days with so many changes on a daily basis? Let's compartmentalize this. What should business owners be thinking about and thinking about implementing in the next 7 to 10 days? What's it look like for your clients?
Well, for my clients, I think we're dealing a lot with the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. That's the paid leave law that Congress passed now about a month ago. And we've had some time to digest it. There's been some regulations that have come out and some guidance. And we've published on our firm's website some updates and some, what have we learned in the last month. But the big practical point for business owners right now is the Department of Labor hasn't promulgated any forms for employees to use to request the leave, but they have promulgated a bunch of requirements on employers to track requests, to obtain certain data. And so we really think it's important for business owners to have a paid leave request. And again, that's not something that is readily available. So I think business owners should be working with their legal counsel to put together a form so that they can meet the record keeping requirements, and frankly, just so they're organized and they're in a good position to apply for the credits when the time comes.
Yeah, when the Families First Act first came out, a couple of my clients, we went back and forth doing forms like that, and I found it was really great for them to really understand the law and how to implement it. The big thing is making sure that you're updating those forms as new guidance comes out.
Yeah, and also just tracking leave as it's happening and what reasons people are, in addition to the documentation. I've been helping clients kind of put together charts or different documentation depending on what works for them to really figure out internally who they got out, for what reasons, making sure that they've checked off getting the proper documentation, making sure that they're doing it right. I had a couple clients this week reach out that had put some things together, and it was very easy to tell that they had some confusion on a couple of points, like they were trying to give FMLA leave to someone who was going out because they were quarantined. And so it's really easy for those types of things to happen. So it made it easy for me to be able to go in and help them figure out where those issues were, because they had been keeping track of, like, all right, these are my 6 employees that, have gone out on leave, and here's how I plan on paying them, and here's a chart of how I'm handling all of this. Is this right? And a lot of it wasn't right. So, definitely reach out to counsel, because it's confusing.
Yeah, I don't even think it's that different than any other type of leave that employers are used to giving in terms of the process. I mean, the form's got to be a little bit different, but it's something that employers have done before. And so they should be able to figure it out here. Just make sure that the form's done and narrowly tailored to the applicable law here.
So do these business owners, are they also required to follow some kind of record keeping as it relates to this?
Yeah, and that's part of the reason to document, and because it creates the initial record, and then it puts you in a better position to be able to track going through and to get the right information that may be necessary to ultimately get the reimbursement credit from the federal government. So in addition to doing all that, tracking the accounting so that you can get the reimbursement when the time comes, you also have to keep these records for 4 years. So that's an important part of this too, is that any records related to Families First leave are going to be required to be kept for 4 years.
Yeah.
What about the PPP relief program? It seems to be probably the most popular and getting the most print about. So many of the business owners I've been talking to have applied for the PPP through their bank. Number one, have any of those funds started to come through? And secondly, what requirements are there for the business owners to do with this money or track and record how this money is spent?
So that's been definitely on the forefront. I think the biggest part of it is the loan going to be forgiven and how much of it? And of course, the answer is it depends, but it's a real reality now since people submitted their applications and the guidance says that funding should hit 10 days after your applications are entered. So it's something that you definitely have to start thinking about. And unfortunately, since the CARES Act has been passed, there's been very little guidance specifically regarding the Paycheck Protection Program. So we're definitely waiting on that. And I think we're owed guidance by April 26th. So, I mean, the things that you can do practically right now is be smart and strategic, like understand how the forgiveness rules work with the caveat that you might not have all the answers right away until more guidance is issued. But if you have a clear understanding of what's forgivable and what's not forgivable, I think that's a great start. Understanding what payroll costs are, whether you can reach the 75% threshold in order to get full forgiveness, knowing what you can use the funds for, but that won't necessarily all be forgiven, and just being strategic about how you're going about planning for the loans to be dispersed.
And a big thing to think about here too is how these two acts and how the loan program and the Families First Act, they interact with each other as well. So, if someone's out on leave, you can't be applying the loan funds to that leave. So some nuances like that are going to be huge when it comes to getting that loan forgiven. And, like any good attorney, we're all going to recommend that you keep documents of all this stuff. And, that for both of these acts, for whether you're trying to track your PPP funds or track the leave, or, make sure you get the proper documentation for either. It's really going to be key, as Veronica said, to be strategic and as Russell said as well, and keep documents, really streamline the process so that you make sure that you've got a good trail of exactly what you're doing and that you're being compliant, so that you don't end up having to pay that bill.
Yeah, and I think one of the simplest pieces of advice so far that I've heard, and I think is good advice, is if you're able to open up a new bank account to put that PPP loan money in. It's the same advice our accountant gave us when my wife started her business, was, put all your expenses on a credit card. So now you've done your accounting for the month, which is kind of a simple little life hack there. I think it's the same thing with the PPP loan. Put all the money in one account so you can show it all going to things that are going to be forgivable, and you don't have any challenges with the commingling of funds.
Are your clients having conversations with you about what's going to happen on the other side of this curve, as discussions about opening up the economy in an eventual way? Are your clients talking to you about strategic planning for expanding operations once things open back up, bringing back employees, maybe reopening or revisiting contracts, et cetera? What kind of advice are you giving to your clients on this, on the eventual reopening of the economy and getting back to full operating?
I think for me, so far, it's been a lot of more long-term planning regarding the strategy of these loans and the different leave policies. It's still in the phase of figuring out how to make sure that we weather this part of the storm, but really starting to, but thinking strategically long-term what does this look like once we pop out the other side, making sure that things get forgiven, making sure that you've got the right policies in place and that you're making strategic decisions now as you bring employees back on or as you put certain policies in place, not, thinking not only just in the short term right now, tomorrow, what it looks like, but as that ramp up starts, making sure that what you're doing now is applicable and makes sense for long term. And then also just the health piece of it, businesses that have kept their doors open for the duration or who might be reopening, everything we're hearing, COVID-19 is not going to just go away tomorrow. It's still going to be at play even as we reopen, especially as businesses may ramp back up a little bit with the different loan funds and different things. So definitely can't neglect that piece of it as well.
Yeah, I think being creative and trying to find solutions to live in an environment of social distancing and working from home to bring on your employees and get them back working, but in a safe way. And that's obviously going to vary through industry and based on the business. So just coming up with some creative ideas going forward is important.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's just putting yourself right what you can do right now, because we don't know exactly when you're going to be able to hit the gas pedal, but doing everything you can to think about what you're going to do when that time comes and preparing yourself for that. I mean, that's really, I think, a good use of this time, especially if things have slowed down and you've got time to do that strategic planning. I think now is an opportune time for that.
Great. Final takeaways. Let's start with Sarah. Final takeaway.
Final takeaway: keep trudging along, figuring out what your strategy looks like, what's going to make sense for you, and as you get the pieces in place, most of my clients are kind of getting to a point where some of the pieces are really starting to come into play here, and it's implementation time, it's implementation of the strategy, and really keep these things in mind that we discussed today, and start thinking to the future and make sure you've got a good strategy in place and you're setting yourself up for success.
Veronica, final takeaway.
I'd say specifically with the PPP and forgiveness, it's so important to understand the process, and it's not easy. So really taking the time to go through it, asking us if you have any questions or anyone else that can give you guidance is so important. It's possible that there's going to be more funding coming out. So the better you are at understanding it and what will work best for your business, it will make your application process so seamless and you won't skip a beat in trying to get that next set of funding.
Russell.
Yeah, I'll keep it pretty simple. I mean, this COVID-19 crisis presents a huge challenge to all of us. And the only way to get past this challenge is to just take it one step at a time. So again, like I said last week, stay calm, stay adaptable, and just bite it off one piece at a time. And you put those blocks together, we'll get there.
Solid advice. We'll see everybody next week. Thank you.
Thank you,
Hi.
guys.
Thank you, Jim.